This is Mile High.
Do I want to tell the story or do I want to show the message?
You've got a lot of work to do between Mile High.
The time has come where we can know
we have a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right,
it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
it's now time for the show.
I'm really honored. And actually, anytime I'm around the presence of the Dooley, I'm honored. However, I'm honored today to welcome Dr. Brian Dooley to this segment of the Philosophy Challenge. Dr. Dooley is a 2005 summa cum laude graduate of Sherman College of Chiropractic. Upon graduation, won the very distinctive Service Award, the B.J. Palmer Philosophy Award, the Milton Garfunkel Award. That's a lot of awards. I don't think he's got the number of awards I have, but he's getting close. He's a lead instructor in chiropractic philosophy. He's a graduate for the first class of the ACP in 2007, and now he serves as an instructor and actually a chair. What is the department chair? Am I remembering right, Dr. Dooley?
Now I'm the Dean of Clinics.
Dean of Clinics, that's what it was. Okay, Dean of Clinics at Sherman College. So this is going to be a very inspiring and also educational segment for people to really understand more about chiropractic philosophy. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Brian Dooley.
Oh, my super pleasure to be here. Always a good time chatting with Dr. Danny Knowles. So let's roll. I'm ready to go.
Well, so, in experience, you've been teaching students both at Sherman and elsewhere for how long?
I've been teaching probably about 11, 12 years now at the college.
So that's quite a while.
Yeah. And then I also teach in the Academy of Chiropractic Philosophers program and the diplomate of the Academy of Chiropractic Philosophers program, which Sherman just launched this year.
Wow, outstanding.
I've been doing that. Yeah, about 5 of those years. No, more than that. Probably about 80 of those years I've been doing that.
Well, you probably, have come across, I would imagine, in those segments, in those programs, people asking some of the harder questions philosophically. We can say our favorite principle, and it's principle 6. We could say things about, above, down, inside out, and having a worldview of inside out versus outside in. Yet, in that number of years of teaching, you probably come across a handful of times the more, things that make you go, kind of questions. Right. And I like to focus on that because those are the things that will help people the most that maybe are not in the academic areas frequently. They've been, took a philosophy class, attended a few seminars, but may not get the opportunity to dive a little bit deeper. And I'm hoping this is going to inspire some people to maybe take the ACP or other programs.
That'll be great.
So let's start with this. With philosophy, is philosophy important for someone in clinical practice?
Well, no matter what you're doing in practice, if you ask why you're doing it, then you're practicing some form of philosophy. So everybody's using it. Now, the question is, well, which philosophy are you actually using? So yes, it's vitally important because it's your why you do anything. And if you look at philosophy, science, and art, philosophy is the base of a pyramid. And so without that base, you have a smaller pyramid, right? So science is important and art is important, but really rises it up and what makes it great is going to be your philosophy. Nobody goes to Egypt to look at the mediocre pyramid, right? They always look to go see the great pyramid. And it's our philosophy that makes our science and art the greatest that it can possibly be. And it's our philosophy that distinguishes us from medicine. So you hear chiropractors all the time taught, right? It's not that they're, we're not medicine, we're not drugs, we're not surgery, but yet at the same time, when you look at their websites, come to me and I'll cure your neck pain, your back pain, or you name the condition. So philosophically speaking, you're doing the same thing, or you're advertising that you're doing the same thing as medicine is doing. You're just choosing a different modality at that point. So if we do that, how can we ever distinguish ourselves from medicine if that's a goal? And I think it should be. We're different. And so for me, knowing the philosophy of to make it super simple, as Dr. Bill Pickens says, the body works better with a proper nerve supply. No matter what choices somebody makes in their life that leads to a symptom or doesn't, they're going to be better off with a nervous system free of the interference of the vertebral subluxation. And so I don't, because if you're sitting there, well, I'm going to choose, I'm just going to be another form of symptom relief. Well, now the only people you can serve are those that actually have symptoms. So the cool thing about taking care of people, because a nerve supply is better off unimpeded, is that actually is a broad scope practice. So we hear broad scope practice is I can do all of these different modalities to do these different things. The problem with that is that's actually a narrow focus on some sort of a symptom, which is usually pain or discomfort. Whereas if I simply check and adjust the spine to help release the vertebral subluxation, that is a narrow focus, but it actually has the broadest reach. So if you want to have the broadest reach in practice, then absolutely your philosophy is what's going to get you there.
Got it. Well, what happens frequently is people get out of school and they now have to run a business. And they may be passionate about their particular technique or their art, right? They may be passionate about science and learning more about science around subluxation. They may be passionate about philosophy and read green books, but then they'll say, or going to a seminar like Mile High or something, some other event. And then they're like, well, but does any of this help me with business? And, I've got to pay my bills. So does philosophy help them in business?
Well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to so philosophy is going to be your roadmap, right? So if you're going on vacation, in most cases, you don't just get in the car and say, where am I going to go? And so philosophy is your roadmap to say, all right, this is where I want to go. So if my business, so first off, define what that business is. Is it, do you want an office full of people that want spines checked for better function, for better expression of life? Do you want people to come in for spines checked just because they have sore necks and stiff backs? If you aren't strong in the philosophy, well, then how do you sell the wellness patient, right? The person that doesn't have a symptom that they know about or something going on, that doesn't realize the devastating effects of dis-ease in the body. When you're strong in the philosophy, it's actually pretty easy to sell. So I know I'm certain about my service. I'm certain about my product that I give humanity. So it makes it real easy for me to go out there and talk about it. And I like to use the analogy of just stay between the buoys. We were talking off air, getting ready to go on a cruise. And when you're leaving port and going on your journey to see these amazing things, the cruise ship has to stay between the buoys or else it runs aground and it's not going anywhere. So it's philosophy that keeps us in that channel of safety so that we can see these amazing things, or otherwise our practice runs aground and it just doesn't go anywhere.
Got it. So, along these lines, and we talked about you teaching for quite a number of years, and which means, thank you for your service and helping so many people, have a direction in their practice. What have you noticed? You have to have noticed patterns at this point. You have to have noticed patterns in teaching. What are some things that you think, or in your experience, that people have the most struggles or difficulties with?
Starting probably is keeping the philosophy. So in Sherman College's case, we have an excellent philosophy department. I would argue the best, chaired by Bill Pickens, who is probably the biggest unsung hero in chiropractic, in my opinion. So our students get first 3 quarters. They're going to get Bill and Dr. Terry Vandervoort. So they go through the 33 principles. They go through worldviews and paradigms and thinking and all that stuff. And so I say that because by the end of third quarter, they're pretty jazzed up about what chiropractic truly is. The problem in teaching is we have a set of standards that we have to comply with in order to stay accredited. So those are called metacompetencies, and there's 7 of them from the CCE. We actually added 2 others to our personal metacomps that we're going to achieve, which deal with philosophy and business as well. But those 7 we have to answer. And so that's where the medicalization of chiropractic comes in. But it only comes in there if you look at it without the philosophical lens. So the challenge is the students, they're jazzed for philosophy. Then they have to do all these diagnosis courses because you just have to do it to graduate in order to get a license. And then they hit clinic. So they're confused. And then they get to clinic and they have to write their notes in a way that they're taking care of people. But what I started thinking about super recently as I was having a conversation with students, because, well, why do we diagnose? Well, if you check somebody and you see that they have a vertebral subluxation, is that a diagnosis? It is. And so it's okay, right? A diagnosis is just a process. When I go to the car, right, or the mechanic, they run diagnostics. So other professions use it. And so it's not just a medical thing. Or have you ever seen something wacky on an x-ray like a fracture and you're thinking that's a fracture, you need to get that checked out? That's a diagnosis. So just because you diagnose something doesn't necessarily mean you're curing that thing. I'm noting that they have something. I refer out conditions. I don't refer out people. So the other side of that is, right, if like at Sherman, and you probably remember this, our review of systems, right? The yes-no sheet, super long. Well, why do we have to do this medical thing? Well, let's look at it through a philosophical lens. So if we get subluxation because we can't adapt to thoughts, traumas, or toxins, well, let's look at that yes-no sheet. So that review of systems, is there anything in there that deals with thoughts, traumas, toxins? Well, the entire thing does. So I know chiropractically, because of my philosophy, if there's a bunch of yeses on there, that doesn't mean I'm going to cure those symptoms or treat them. What it means is, holy cow, they've been dealing with potential effects of subluxation for a long time. That may mean I have to have an extended care plan. Conversely, if they don't have a lot of yeses, well, maybe the care plan's not as extended in order to keep their nervous system functioning at a high level. So the challenge that we have is keeping the philosophy in the philosophy. I don't think we need more philosophy in schools. We need it more in the classes that we already have. And so then the challenge becomes, and I look at it through a Sherman College lens. Well, what about those faculty that didn't go to Sherman College? Now at Sherman College, they have to take philosophy 1 and 2. So the 33 principles plus the intro to philosophy in order to teach there. So we help train people up. That's easy to say, well, they took the class. Did they pay attention? I mean, I've had people when I was teaching philosophy too, like, hey, we all learn the same philosophy. I don't really need to pay attention. Not true, because we all can admit, I think, that philosophy is presented differently at the schools. So some schools won't let you use the word subluxation or innate. Some schools don't have green books easily readily available. So I think that's where the biggest challenge is A, you have the philosophies taught way different, and then B, it's just being able to keep it in this perception of chiropractic as a medicalized education. Well, if we're strong in our philosophy, we can do everything that we do, and it's still straight chiropractic. But you have to be really strong in the principles and what chiropractic is about in order to have that, or it's easy to slide into, well, this is just taking care of sore necks and stiff backs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then, you teach people philosophy 1, philosophy 2. And you're reviewing the 33 principles with them, and you're in other aspects of philosophy from Stevenson's and associated texts. Is there a particular area that at times might be something that people struggle with, or that is like, man, this is a finer point that you realize that this sometimes, it doesn't mean all the class, but some repeatedly it comes up?
Probably the biggest one to start, and it may go with your last question as well, is universal intelligence and God the same thing. because universal intelligence is our major premise, right? Universal intelligence is in all matter, continually gives to it all its properties and actions, thus maintaining it in existence. If you struggle with, is that, you're just talking about God or it's not God, and that's where your struggle is, immediately you can be like, well, I'm not going to pay attention to the rest of it. And so now that being said, if you feel that universal intelligence is God, well, then maybe you don't struggle as much with it when you go down. But I think if you go through the rest of the principles, when you start talking about them, that might actually be where you might struggle with, well, is it God? Because if you look at, God is love. Everybody says it. So, but if you look at principle 11, right, the forces of universal intelligence manifest themselves in physical law, are unswerving, unadapted, and show no solicitude, structures in which they work, which means if conditions are present, things are going to happen, right? So tornadoes and hurricanes, and you pick your natural disasters, things that happen, horrible things happen to people in that. Is that love? So the challenge is, all right, and I would proffer, spoiler alert, I think universal intelligence came from God, me personally, but it's not God himself. And then I guess that's an argument, because we could say that you and I are, right, images of God. So does that make us God? Well, no. But I think universal intelligence came from him, and he can go in there and change it anytime he wants, right? So I look at universal intelligence as just simply the physics of the universe. If this is present, then this is what's going to happen, and it happens every time. So if you're not really, really confident and certain on what actually is and how you define universal intelligence, because that's the major premise. And in a deductive argument, if that's weak or your certainty in it is weak, then everything below it you're going to have trouble with eventually. And so I think that's probably the one thing that really comes out of, if we can settle on that, then it makes the rest of it easy. So if universal intelligence is simply an organizing principle of the universe, and whether it came from God or not, right, that's a debate for another time. It's not a chiropractic debate. If we can agree that the universe is organized, and therefore something has to be organizing it, some principle, and where that principle came from, who cares, really? It's there. And so now I can follow those other 33 or 32 principles, and I can talk to the most devout of a person of faith, and I can talk to an atheist and sell it the same way. And they both can have buy-in. So I think that's probably the thing. It is universal intelligence God, and depends on your audience.
That's such a valuable point. I know you had a recent presentation about that. I believe it is at Sherman Lyceum, if I'm remembering correctly.
At IRAPS.
At IRAPS, yeah. So now, and that's, I think, also one of the areas what you just said is where people can need the most help, is what you just went over. It's one of those. So then, is philosophy impact your science? So getting clear on that relative to, for example, a religious view is what we talked about. Does philosophy impact your science? Meaning, like, well, science is science, like it's a study. Does philosophy change science? Or what impact does philosophy have on science?
So I think philosophy drives philosophy. So philosophy asks the questions, science attempts to answer it, and then if there's an answer, another question usually pops up. So science, I don't believe, is an end product. Science is a journey, and because how can we don't know what we don't know. So things that seem, this makes perfect sense today, all of a sudden something comes up, right? When you and I are old enough that when people had some abdominal pain, automatically, let's just take the appendix out, right? And what was the reason? Well, because it's useless. It's just there. Well, then in the early 2000s, they find out that the appendix is really important for the immune system, which, of the science classes I've taken, it's a good idea to have a healthy immune system, but we weren't designed with extra parts. We'll just throw that thing out. So yeah, you can function pretty well without an appendix. So well done, innate, but maybe, but that was it. Science said this thing's not important, but then science found out it was. Well, all those people that don't have it, sorry. I mean, good luck to you. And at that point, I would definitely say, go to the chiropractor and make sure your body's functioning as well as possible. So we can't say that science is at an endpoint. We don't know what's going to come up, and what's going to drive that is going to be questions of, is this true, or why is this happening? And by definition, that's philosophy, right? So philosophy, we have 5 branches of it. We have metaphysics of how does the universe work. We have aesthetics of how do things look to us. We have ethics, right? Is this right? We have politics, which is how do we relate to other people? And then we have epistemology of how do we know what we know? So in order to answer those questions, you're going to have to do some sort of science to come up with it. So, yeah, you can't have one without the other. It's impossible.
Well, then goes to the next question of, does philosophy impact your art?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't it, right? Because again, so let's say who practices answering their phones, or who trains with their staff, right? Let's go over a hello on the phone, or let's do a day 1, or let's do a day 2, or whatever it is. Because if my philosophy says this, getting somebody on the table is so important, well, then it's going to drive how well you train for it. Again, there's no way you're not the best palpator you're ever going to be. You're going to be better tomorrow, and you're going to be better all the days to come until you just stop palpating. That's the day that you're as good as you're going to get, maybe, but it's not as we can always be better. And so the philosophy says, hey, I need to work on these things. Pay attention, maybe at a seminar. Don't actually just be on your phone, which I've been certainly guilty of. Is this thing important enough to put the work in to be better? And when you put work in to be better, that's when your art improves. I mean, that's why they call our offices a practice, right? We practice every day. My philosophy is going to be why I'm going to stay late, because somebody just flat needs to come in. My philosophy is going to be why I go in maybe on a Saturday or a Sunday when I don't normally have office hours, because I think it's that important to help somebody, which my art is going to get better in that moment. My philosophy says I'm going to get up with Danny Knowles and have a conversation about philosophy. Hopefully, I'm a little bit better at conversing at the end of this, just because I've done it. So yeah, I think philosophy absolutely drives your art.
Excellent. Now then, if, as an instructor of philosophy in many different areas, is there something that you would really want to see people read or study relative to philosophy?
Lots of things. I think number one, I think the chiropractic textbook is read that. It's BJ gets the bad rap for he's tough to read. Well, BJ didn't write this one. So this was Stevenson that tried to take BJ's writings, took BJ's writings and put it in a much more digestible form. Some of the stuff, I mean, there's confusions in there and there's contradiction in there. So spoiler alert, but read where the profession was, and now you can maybe know how to go. So read more than the introduction, read the entire book and see this is actually what they defined. It's not that what they thought chiropractic was, it's what they defined. And they get to define it because they were the ones that built it. So whether you agree with them or not really doesn't matter. Then whatever you're doing is something different. So I would do Stevenson for sure. A super easy one is not easy, but Chiropractic Philosophy by Joe Strauss, easily digestible. And then the one that's sort of recent, that's not necessarily chiropractic philosophy, is Restoring Reason by Travis Corcoran, because Travis is able to philosophically say we have to look at our reasoning sometimes, because our educated intelligence gets in the way. We think, well, as long as it's good for the person, then it's chiropractic. Well, no, it's not. And that doesn't make things bad. At the end of the day, it's an is or an isn't thing. So being able to look and use good philosophic deductive practices of is this or isn't this is essential. And Travis writes a book that just makes it, wow, I can see where, as I present my ideas, this doesn't have actually as sound a philosophical base as I want. So I think you get the chiropractic side of it, and now you can make the more digestible side of it with Dr. Strauss's book, and then you can take Travis's book and just use it as sort of an outside chiropractic, but Travis is a chiropractor, but he does have a doctorate in philosophy, so he knows what he's talking about. And then just be a sponge. That is my thinking process correct? Because it's real easy to justify it. Super easy to justify it. And we do that all the time, right? But that's just our educational intelligence getting in the way of what's really true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, another area that is something that Tom Gilardi and really, I don't know if he brought it to the profession, but in my mind, he did bring it to the profession, or made a big focus of this, is one's objective. So, and Sherman really brings that home for people, that your objective is what defines a profession. I don't think they learn that in any other school, as far as I know, and I don't know everything. Why is a person's objective important?
Well, the objective of your central area interest defines what a profession is. And so I was talking at an event with a board member from another school who said, well, can't we just agree that, chiropractic's not drugs or surgery? Okay, it's not. Neither is massage. Neither is, pastoral counseling. Neither is somebody running a restaurant. Neither is going to a concert. Neither is a lot of things. We can't. It's defining it by what it isn't is not going to move us forward. So having an objective, a central area of interest that is a distinctive profession. So it's the one thing, right? You do medical doctors do good? You're here because somebody did, right? They did very good. And so we're glad that they did. Do architects do good? They build cool buildings. Or I want people to feel better. Well, you can do that as a musician, right? We've all gone to concerts. Man, I feel pretty good coming out of there. But I want to take care of the vertebral subluxation in order for somebody to have, the highest expression of life. Who else does that? Through the location analysis and adjustment of the vertebral subluxation. Nobody. So it defines us, it separates us, it makes us distinct, and it makes it easy to sell at that point, because I'm not doing the same thing in a different way. I'm doing something totally different, and I can sell that. And if people want it, well, then the office is open.
Got it. And there could be an objective that's really the antithesis of chiropractic.
Yeah, I mean, if your objective is just to get somebody, quote unquote, out of pain, well, that actually goes against the chiropractic philosophy, because is pain appropriate? Pain's a signal, right? It tells us that something's going on. Well, I can do these other things to help innate. Well, sure, we can just shoot somebody up full of morphine and they're out of pain. So why don't we just do that? Right. But we have an opioid problem in the country because it's just trying to get people out of pain. Chiropractic's not about getting people out of pain. It's getting people to feel more. Right. And so that they're not that, hey, I want you to sit and hurt all the time. It's like understanding, why am I feeling what I'm feeling? If I sprain an ankle, well, then maybe I should, because it hurts, I should put my foot up and rest on the couch so that innate can do the healing without having more destructive pressure upon it. So why do you want to rush that, right? Have you ever gone by and watched like some apartments go up and you're like, man, they put those things up real quick. I'm not want to live in there. And then, you find out things start to break down in those places because they rushed it. So principle 6, the one that everybody knows, is time. Well, it's innate's time, not my time. So my educated intelligence may say we have to do these things quicker, but that just goes against the philosophy. I mean, yes, you might feel uncomfortable. I mean, I've had it before where, I was symptomatic, had a cold or whatever, and was feeling crummy. But when I've gotten checked and not adjusted, and I was okay with that. So mentally, I still think I got through the process better because I knew whatever I was experiencing at that time was what innate wanted. And I trust innate implicitly. So I can just sit back and just feel crummy for a couple of days, knowing that was the best for my body at that moment. And now the other side of that, which is really cool, is if you're going to be feeling more and trust yourself to feel more, well, then love and joy, you feel more as well. And it opens yourself up to this really cool existence of looking at what's right in the world and not what's wrong.
So important. So important. So then, you said something very people may have drifted by or not noticed, which is you said principle 6, the one that everybody knows. And I might argue that a little bit or expand it that I think there's two that they know, which is principle 1 and principle 6. They tend to not necessarily know any other principles. Can you speak to that and why it's important to know more of them?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm going to argue because I go to events all the time and somebody asks what the major premise is and there's never an answer. I say never, it's very few, or it's not correct. So the example, I was at an event and I would say, so here's the thing, I don't like the term principled chiropractor.
I'm not a fan of it either. It bothers me.
Because whether you have the straightest of the straights or the mixery of the mixers, they're both operating through a set of principles. So whatever. So just let that one drop. And then, and then it also says our profession has room for those that aren't, quote unquote, the principled ones, right? It's not. If you're not following the 33, you're doing something different. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's just something different. So I was at the event and they're like, who's principled? Woo-hoo, lots of noise. And I said, well, who knows one? And then it gets quiet. So why don't and of course, from the back of the room, somebody at every event will always say, I know number 6, right? There's no process. It does not require time. And that's fine. So is it any question why our profession hasn't moved forward? Because we as a profession don't have an understanding of what we are about. Because your point, even if we do know that there's a universal intelligence in all matter continually giving to it its properties and actions, thus maintaining an existence, it can't happen without some period of time. That's still pretty doggone vague, right? As far as what's going on, right? Because people think with universal intelligence, they immediately think, well, it's the same thing as innate, and it's not. So if you don't understand how you get from 1 all the way down to 33, it's difficult to truly be practicing chiropractic. It just is. And so I was at another event where I heard people using principles. I'm like, yeah, it's fantastic. So I'm at this event. It's going really well. So excited to hear principles. This talk's amazing. And I said, well, what's your favorite principle? And somebody posted, well, the power that made the body heals the body. That's a good bumper sticker, but it is not a principle. It's not one of the 33. And so that's what people go with, right? Because with the principles, my commodity is the analysis of the spine, my greatest commodity. It's the analysis of the spine and not the adjustment. Because you go to name the seminar, right? And everybody's asking everybody, would you adjust me? Would you adjust me? Would you adjust me? And they're super excited about it, right? Well, who goes to the dentist and would you give me a root canal? Would you give me a root canal? Would you? They don't go to dentist seminars, right? You don't go to a medical thing, would you take my appendix out, please? So it's actually a bad thing to need to be adjusted. And I think people don't realize that. Now, do we see amazing things on the other side of that? Of course we do. But the big thing is check my spine, because you're at a seminar. Well, how well is that analysis when you're just in a room, right? I mean, are we just feeling for lumps and bumps, or do we have an analysis system that does translate into doing it in a hallway? Hopefully you do, because if you're not doing a really good analysis, principle 26, right? So that's way down there, says that universal forces are destructive. And spoiler alert, chiropractors, the thrust from your hands is universally a destructive force to that organism unless that organism's innate can use it for good. So your analysis better be spot on, or you're putting a force in, and we don't know that. So just because you release some endorphins and enkephalins and woo, right, and we made some popping noises, that doesn't mean it's better for the patient, right, or the person. I'm going to forget patient. I don't like that word. Use it for the person. And I think that's really the strong thing. So I know principle 26, that what I put into somebody can be destructive. So is it a good idea to take an x-ray? Sure. Right? Because that force is going in somewhere. I don't know what the structures are under there unless I can actually see it. So take the film. or a cone beam CT or whatever it is. Now, when you know somebody, you know somebody. But yeah, I think it's super important because it's not about would you check me is what we should all be saying at seminars, because I want to experience this seminar at the highest level possible. The only way to do that is without subluxation. So I'm hoping I don't have one, but at the same time, it's not like, it's not a woo-woo thing. I mean, I love it when I don't need to be, when I'm holding and I don't need to be checked, because I get off the table like, this is great. Even though maybe I'm a little achy because I worked out a little harder at the gym, or actually worked out at all, whatever it is, I experience the day much more at peace, knowing that my body's working exactly the way that it's supposed to be.
Right. Man, I really, this is very powerful and deep, and I hope the people that are watching are really getting a lot out of this, because it's vital. Some very key areas for you to think about relative to what you do in practice and serving the people that you have on the table, and they're trading time and money to be with you in your office. It could be anywhere else. They can go to any other kind of healthcare, but for some reason they decide, hey, I got to give that valuable time that I could have been with my kids, and money that I could have spent in the pharmacy aisle in the drugstore. I could be in, a Reiki office. I could be wherever it is, but for some reason they have trust in you, and that somehow this is going to impact their life for the better. And you want to be clear about what it is that you're doing, and most certainly why you're doing it. And at the very least, the person that's coming to see you deserves that at the very least, versus just doing something, just because they'll pay you for it without necessarily a clear objective or a clear why, or how that actually has some, clinical follow through am I actually getting some outcome towards that objective, and I'm assessing that in some way, that I'm actually, impacting them. I have to say, when you look at the 33 principles, people may have a favorite, right? And maybe it's principle 6. Maybe it's principle 1. And I got to say, I'm really not a fan, just like you said, of that term principled chiropractor, because it means lots of different things. It could just mean you're ethical or unethical, right? I have principles of, hey, I'm a good person, and I have principles that might be religious, and I live my life relative to principles in a Bible or something. It doesn't mean that you actually know the chiropractic principles, etc., and or why I'm taking care of this person. So I too am not a huge fan of that. However, I do value the principles that are the foundational values of chiropractic. And with that, one of my favorites is the triune of life. I think for sure that people need to understand that, and that if there's another book they have to read other than Stevenson's, it'd be read the Triune of Life. No doubt. I actually give that to team members when we hire a chiropractic assistant. I don't give them Stevenson's and say you have to read this. It's a little bit long for a CA training. But I do give them the Triune of Life and say, I want you to read this in your first month. Right. And I think that's a little shorter and encompasses enough for a chiropractic assistant, principle 4. And it helps them a little bit of like why we're doing other than neck pain and back pain. And I can have a conversation with it about them. What can you speak to about the Triune of Life and its importance?
Well, one, it's 54 pages. So if you can't get through that, I don't know what to tell you. But when the thing that I like the most, so the Triune of life is a triunity of 3 necessarily united factors, namely intelligence, force, and matter. So that's the principle, right? And we know that this is Reggie Gold's thesis for his PhD. But so life, now, to get life is to have something. When we hear the term life, is people want to just immediately apply it to biological life, like people and maybe dogs and cats. But when we talk life, it's everything at that point. So universal life is anything that has motion in it. and all things have motion if you go down to the molecular level. So in this case, life is synonymous with being in existence. So in order to be in existence, there has to be a plan to have a thing. So that's the intelligence. Then there has to be the thing. So the intelligence is immaterial. You have the then thing, right? So in order to make this computer that I'm using, there's plastic and metal and wires and whatever. So there's a plan of put that together, and then when we're done, it'll be something called a computer. But in order to get that plan expressed through those material pieces that we can see, taste, hear, feel, whatever, there has to be some effort to put all that stuff together. So that's where the force is the bridge between the plan and the material that it's using. So the matter. So we can use that in any area of our life. So if you have a healthy marriage, there would have to be a plan, right? Of this is whatever your definition is of a healthy marriage. Then there's a couple of people, right, that are going through life together. Well, then there's the effort to put that together. Now, if you're not in a healthy marriage, well, somewhere, if the plan is the plan, then it's either I just married the wrong person, or maybe it's the effort one or both of us is putting in, or not putting in this case, and that's why it's failing. Or look at your business. If there's an issue with your business, so you have a plan for the business, in order for it to exist, well, you're in the existence at that moment. Do you train well? Are you putting in a lot of training? Are the pieces good? Do you have the right CAs? Do you have the right associates? Is there something you need to be better as the doctor? So the triune of life explains where you are at any moment in your own existence, whether it's personal, professional, whatever it is. So you can go through and say, okay, here I am. Is if I'm not satisfied with it, well, then there's an issue either with the plan, the effort, or the pieces that you're using to put together.
And so important, so important. So at the end of the day, or at least at the end of this conversation that we're having, it's highly recommend that you dive deeper into our foundational chiropractic principles, because they will impact your science, your art, your business, that person that's in front of you that's looking for help. It'll impact your communication. It'll impact your procedures of how you might do an initial visit, or what recommendations you have, or how you go over results with people, or your every aspect of how you practice. And without analyzing or thinking about what it is that your philosophical point of view is, or why you're doing things, it's going to, you won't be as impactful as you could be with a very clear direction.
Yeah, and I think a super easy thing to remember is the first 17 principles. They're called the universal principles for a reason, because they apply in every situation. And so just in order to say, all right, because you get people, I just want life to happen to me. Well, good luck. I mean, but it's amazing that people that have good plans and good effort and good things to put that effort through, it's amazing that those are the ones that find success in life. And because it's simply fulfilling the triune of life of intelligence, force, and matter. You have to have all three in order to have whatever state of existence you're trying to get to. And so, that's what I love about it. And so going from this big thing of, all right, the universe is organized, to why my piezophore may be on an atlas in principle 33, to let the virtuous banker do its work. That's how I get there. And I'm super confident in why I do it, but I'm able to apply these other things, in other areas as well. So it's really just cleaned up my life super easy, because I'm either in violation of the principles, or I'm in coordination with them, principle 32. And when I'm in coordination with the principles, then it's amazing how smooth and I mean, it doesn't mean I don't have challenges, have them all the time. But it's just interesting how I go through life, and it's just the sun shines a little brighter.
Yeah. I so well said. And, I so appreciate all you give to the chiropractic profession. I've got to say, anytime Dr. Dooley is going to be presenting, and you're somewhere near that, I cannot recommend enough that you be there. For example, whether you're at Sherman Lyceum or whatever it might be. Actually, now that we say this, you're going to be speaking at Mile High. So I cannot recommend enough that if you are in the vicinity of Colorado or wherever you you get to Colorado from Mile High 12, it's high noon. It's Mile High noon. So, most certainly be in Dr. Brian Dooley's session. You will gain tremendously from that.
Well, and I would tell everybody, shameless plug, A, thank you for those words. I appreciate it. But B, Mile High is one of those, doesn't matter where you're from, you need to be there because it is one of the more pure philosophical things. You will hear the principles from various speakers, not just myself, but a lot of people. And it really, like I said, you go to Mile High and you are between the buoys when you go back. And you hear it all the time that practice just explodes when people go home from Mile High because people are where they're supposed to be, in right relationship with the universe. So definitely get out to Mile High. I'm trying to figure out what to speak about, right? We can't do James Bond themes anymore, but maybe we can do a Western theme and see what kind of Western quotes I can throw in a 25-minute talk.
There we go. There we go. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brian Dooley, for your service and helping so many chiropractors get a direction for their practice. And, the principles of chiropractic impact the direction of their life. And so that is an incredible gift that you've given so many chiropractors. And I've got to say, thank you so much. And for all that you give to chiropractic.
Oh, well, thank you, Danny. I appreciate that we get to walk through this thing together. And anybody that if I said something you liked or if I said something you didn't like, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to discuss because I don't consider myself the smartest person in the room by any stretch, but and so I like to hear and I like to have my ideas challenged so that I do become more certain, right? And I was thinking about like the principles, why get deeper with them? Have you ever had a song that you listen to it and you know it, and then you listen to it and you're like, oh, so that's what they're really saying? Well, that's why we want to go and study the principles, much like you would study your favorite song. The more you go through them, the more they reveal. And so I highly recommend. I would love to just have conversations with anybody about them. So people are free to reach out to me anytime. You can find me at Sherman College.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, thank you so much. Appreciate you. And thank you so much for giving to chiropractic. And we look forward to seeing you at Mile High and just coming around the corner.
No, it won't be long. So we'll see you soon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.